Hey guys, how's it going? It's Travis Mortz with the ForesthillFilmLab. I recently picked up these two Minolta X700s at a yard sale, and I've been picking up a lot of Minoltas lately, so I've been giving them a little bit more attention than I normally would. And after picking these up, I've realized that these cameras are like amazing cameras, and I wanted to share with you guys some of the awesome features about this camera and tell you a little bit why I'm starting to fall in love with the Minolta X700. So here we've got the Minolta X700. Minolta's made a lot of great cameras in the past, and just before this one, they came out with a lot of electronic controlled cameras, the X370, the XG5, the XG9, the XG7, all those electronically controlled 35 millimeter SLRs. And usually when I find those cameras, I'm not really too excited about it. They tend to have a lot of problems. They don't work or whatnot, and there's just nothing really too special about them. But when I picked up this camera, I noticed something different about it. And although I've had one of these cameras in the past, I never shot it. I basically found an X700 and sold it just a few days later, and never even really paid it any attention, did any research on it, or put any film in it. So when I got these two cameras, I thought, I should give these things some attention because I know how well regarded the X700 is by people who use it. So I decided to dive into this camera a little bit and just kind of see what it's made of. And let me tell you, I'm very, very impressed with this camera's ability, and basically just had to share this video with you guys. So the Minolta X700 is it's a lot of things actually. It could be a fully manual 35 millimeter SLR. It is also a aperture priority SLR. If you want to decide to shoot aperture priority, it'll decide the shutter speed for you. It also has program mode, which is shutter weighted, which means that if you put it in program mode, it will always give you the fastest shutter speed available for the light source you have. So that's really awesome because that's a whole nother style of shooting that I normally wouldn't take up, but maybe I will with this camera because I shoot a lot of action. So if I'm shooting in priority mode, that means it's going to be shooting the fastest shutter speed and the widest aperture, and I think that's pretty good. Additionally, this camera's got two different photo cells that it reads meter readings from. One is inside of the prism, and that's the cell that we use for our everyday basic metering. And then there's actually one on the inside of the camera that measures light reflected off of the film base, and that is for flash photography. So when the lady tried selling me these cameras, I said, no, I don't really want the flashes. They kind of just get piled up and I don't use them. And she insisted I take the flashes, so I took the flashes. And when I came home and started reading, I realized, holy shit, this flash, this 280px is specially made to go with this X700. And when they are together, I could put this camera in aperture mode and set any aperture I want. And this camera's flash will talk to it and will be perfect every single time. Because of that photo cell inside. It reads the light reflecting off of the film base rather than just around the room, and it gets a perfect reading every single time. So just for an example, this is how the Hasselblad 503CW, this is how it reads its light. It's got a photo cell on the bottom that measures light reflected off the film base, and Minolta does the same thing with this camera. So that's like really badass. I could really put this flash on and shoot freely, free as a bird, and it's gonna be the right exposure because the flash and the camera talk to each other. So I think that's really great because this is an old school looking camera. It's got really nice design, but it has all these high-tech features. So I'm gonna take the flash off because it's, I'm not really shooting with the flash a lot, but it was kind of cool when I did read about it and I put the flash on and it all worked together. So this one also has a motor drive unit. Now, back in 1984, when the person I bought this from purchased this camera, the camera body was $200 and the motor drive was $200. So, just to put it in perspective how valuable these motor drives really are. So I'm going to take the motor drive off in just a second. I just want to show you some of the things it does. It's got auto winding. Oh, hold on, I gotta... Oh, see, actually I have it on aperture priority, and that's a really slow shutter speed because this camera does great aperture priority. So we'll just put it on whatever. So we've got it on single mode, and then it also has continuous mode, low, that's 2 frames a second, and then high is 3.5. And this is the most awesome part about this motor drive. I actually shot almost a whole roll before even realizing it, but this motor drive also has a vertical release button. So if I want to shoot vertical photos, I can. My hat's in the way, but you know, I can shoot vertical with this motor drive or horizontal, which is really cutting edge, I would say, for the time. And like I said, these were $200 back when they were brand new, and now if you have an X700 and you want this motor drive, I think you could probably get them for 40 or 50 bucks. Totally worth it. You got a release down here to release the film if you want to rewind it. I am going to take the motor drive off, however, because I want to strip this thing down bare so you guys can really see everything it's made of. So let me tell you a couple more features about this camera, and then we'll get a closer look at it as well. I'll show you guys some photos that I've recently made with it, and yeah, we'll just really get into it. So here is the self timer. We could set it to self timer, press it off if we don't want to execute that, and then if you hold this button down, it'll actually lock your exposure if you're shooting on an aperture priority mode. As you can see, the aperture priority changes the shutter speed based on our aperture. So as I'm stopping down, the shutter's obviously getting longer, and this camera will do up to 8 seconds in auto mode. So pretty much all the time it's going to do the right exposure. This camera knows exactly what it's doing. Let's see, what other kind of features will I talk to you guys about before we get a closer look? I think we ought to just get a closer look at the camera. We'll talk a little bit about the close-up features and some of the small things that I didn't even notice until I started reading about this camera. Alrighty, so here we have the Minolta X700. I'm basically going to give you guys a close-up look at some of the features that this camera has and some of the reasons why I like it so much. So let's get started. Here we've got the self-timer and exposure lock. So if you lift it up and you press the button on top, it's going to start your self-timer. And then if you press it down and hold it down while you're shooting, it will actually lock whatever exposure that your camera has set. So see, we'll shoot exposure here, and we'll hold that button, and it'll be the same over there, you know. And so that's pretty neat. It's really helpful when you're actually looking through the viewfinder and you can see what your shutter speed's set at. We'll go up here to the dial since we're up here. The nice thing about this dial is it's actually 360-degree rotating, so that's really nice. It's not frustrating. You don't have to flip it back the other way. And we've got program mode. Like I mentioned, program mode is going to give you the fastest shutter speed for the given light. So that's the fastest shutter speed based on a 1.4. And then what we also have here is aperture priority, which is going to give us the shutter speed based on the aperture we have chosen. And when we're in program mode, we would put the camera actually on f16. We would lock this lens piece here like that. And now the camera is able to control the aperture and the shutter as it chooses, and we don't have to do anything. This is a point and shoot now if you put it on program mode. And it really is a point and shoot if you have it on aperture priority, unless you're like in broad daylight and have it at 1.4, then you're screwing up and you're going to be missing exposure. But aperture priority is, you know, just as automatic as program is. So we've got our shutter speeds up to 1,000. I do wish this camera went to 2,000. That's my only complaint about it really, is that it's not a little bit faster. We've got our 60. Since I'm shooting black and white, you can't tell that the 60 is red. That means that is our flash's sync speed. Here's a really interesting feature. So the power switch is here, which I think is really sleek, like that. And as you see, it says on, and then we have off, and then we have this on with a like a speaker next to it. I'll get really close so you guys can see it. Let's see. See that on with a speaker on it? Well, what that means is that this camera will give us an audible warning if we're shooting on, say, program mode, or we'll say we're shooting on aperture priority. If the shutter speed is going to be lower than 30th of a second, which is a handheld speed, it will tell us the second our finger touches the button, hey, that's a slow shutter speed, just so you know. So now if I'm out shooting in daylight, this beeper will never go off, but it's like, hey, I can't, it's going to be a slow shutter speed, is basically what the camera is telling you. If I point it up at the light, it stops. If I stop down, it'll beep whenever it's not enough. Let's see. See? So F16 is going to be 30th of a second with it pointing at the light. And so that's pretty interesting. I probably wouldn't use this feature very much because it's annoying as hell, but it's really nice to know because if you are a person who doesn't want to look all that much and you're not paying attention to the lights inside, then you could have a problem. So that is the dial. And then there's this little window right here. Oh shit, let me turn that off. So there's this little window right here. And what this is, I'm actually going to show you on my other camera that has film in it. This is an indicator to let you know that your film was loaded safely. You see how it's got the white in there? Well, it's actually red, but we're shooting black and white. But it shows you that there's film loaded in there. I'm on the 20th frame, and it shows me about how much I have left in my roll. And basically, that's an indication to let you know that your film is loaded safely and that it's doing a good job. So I thought that was pretty interesting. That's a feature I haven't seen before. So here we go to this side. We've got our exposure compensation dial if we decide while we're shooting on aperture or program, if we want the camera to under or overexpose, we could do that. These dials are always kind of pointless to me because they do the same thing as our aperture. And then here we have the ISO dial, which is super easy to move. I don't feel like I'm breaking anything when I do this. I like that. Let's move on to this side. This is cool. Okay, so we've got our lens release right here. No big deal. Got a nice little mirror in there. And actually, I can actually show you the focusing screen. This has an AccuMat focusing screen. And as you can see, it's got multiple dimensions on the circle. So when you're looking through, it's got a split screen in the center. And then outside of the center, there's like a grid that goes sharp to clear when it's in focus. And then outside of that, there's the ground glass, which will also get sharp when your subject is in focus. So focusing with this camera is quite literally a dream. It's really easy, and the focusing screen is really unlike any other camera that I've shot. Nothing like Nikon or anything. It's more high-tech than that. And so that's our lens release. I'm going to put the lens back on. And this is really cool. This right here is actually for a cable release. So I'm going to grab one and show you guys. Let me focus. So I was wondering, because of the electronic styled shutter release button, how would you use a cable release on this camera to shoot bulb? Well, Minolta put this port on the side. They did think about everything. And now we've got a cable release, which is just awesome. Like, that's so cool. It's almost cooler than plugging it into the shutter button. So I really like that. That's badass. Here we've got our depth of field preview button. If we stop our lens down, we could preview our depth of field. Let's see. This is a button I feel like a lot of people don't use. I suggest using the depth of field preview button. It's really awesome, and if nothing else, it's going to help you understand depth of field easier. You know, focus on a water bottle, press this button and see what the hell's going on in there. Really great. This side we've got our flash PC port. Cool. So we could shoot pocket wizards on this thing, or we could put the pocket wizard up here actually, but if you want to fire a flash just with a cable, you can. Let's see, when you press this button, it activates the meter inside for 15 seconds just by pressing it, and then otherwise the meter inside will be off, which is pretty neat. We've got this lens lock on the lens, so when we are shooting program, we can lock it. I think I showed you guys that a second ago. This camera came with a 51.4 or a 51.7 lens, but the best part about Minolta's are that their lenses are so easy to find, and they're very, very affordable. So here we've got Rocore 28mm 2.8. I've actually come across two of these lenses, and I probably didn't pay anything for them. They're very, very easy to come by. And then we've got the Minolta 135 335. This is an excellent portrait lens. I think I even included some photos, or I will include some photos with both of these lenses so you guys can see. But yeah, that is the Minolta X700. It really is a beautiful, beautiful camera. I'm really happy with how good of a job it did. And these lenses are amazing. The feel of the camera is amazing. All the features of it are really awesome. We've got our battery thing down here. And also, this camera, when you hook up the motor drive, you don't have to take anything off. You just screw it in, and it works immediately. This thing's still got the plastic on the bottom. And here's our battery spot. This thing runs off 2 batteries, no problem. Really, really beautiful camera. So there you go. There you have it. That is the Minolta X700. Go out and buy one. So now that I've explained to you guys some of the features of this camera and really told you, showed you how capable it really is, the best part, the absolute best part about this camera is how cheap they are. You can find these cameras almost all the time under $100. And for the amount of technology you're getting and the strength of the Minolta lenses are so sharp, they're so good. Everything about this camera is well worth the money. And with all the technology that this camera has, you can ensure that you're going to get a good photo time and again. You don't have to be questioning if the exposure is going to be right. You could trust your camera and still enjoy the experience and still have full, complete control of your image, which is what I love about shooting an aperture priority, is that you really aren't giving up anything. If you're the person who decides their aperture first, the shutter speed is going to be determined by the light you have anyways. So all the camera's doing is doing the work for you, so you're not turning this dial back and forth and forgetting. But yeah, there's just so many small things about this camera that I'm really, really impressed by, and it's actually made shooting it really, really enjoyable. It's a fun camera to shoot, it's lightweight, and I just feel it's a little bit more unique than what I'm used to. I usually shoot a Nikon F2, and I don't really trust the light meter in that, so I'm using Sunny 16 anyways. This camera still gives me a fully manual experience. If I decide to have one, I'm manually focusing, I can manually advance, but it's giving me dead-on accurate exposures every single time that I could trust, and that is really, really nice. So basically, I'm going to show you guys a couple photos. I've only shot one roll of film in this camera. It was like this roll of Legacy Pro. I don't even know where it came from. It was in the bag, but the results were excellent. So I'm going to show you guys maybe 5 or 6 photos from that roll. And like I said, this was my first roll through this camera. And I put it on aperture priority and changed my aperture back and forth, and it did the rest of the work. And I gotta say, I'm very impressed by this camera, and I'll definitely be keeping one of these in my arsenal. So take a look at these photos, and I'll see you guys in a minute. I hope you guys enjoyed some of those images, and as you can see, the exposures on those photos really couldn't get any better. I was really impressed by the Minolta's ability to read the light through the lens and nail it every single time. I shot the camera fully on aperture priority and just let the camera do all the thinking, and I even tried to go in different light situations, and it really nailed it every single time. So that was really awesome. I'm really happy that I found these cameras, and I'm really happy that I decided to put some film through them, because the results have been excellent, I would have to say. I've got another roll of film in this one, so hopefully I'll have some color photos soon on my Instagram if you want to check that out. Oh, and by the way, I decided to film this video all in black and white. A buddy of mine, Daniel Duarte, he recommended maybe trying to do some black and white videos, and I thought it was a pretty good idea, so I'm going to try to be the black and white guy. You guys tell me what you think about it. Like to see how you guys feel. Those photos were shot on black and white film for the record, so that's why they were also black and white. But yeah, I think that's about it. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you get out there and try to find yourself one of these Minolta X700s, because it really is the best Minolta to have, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to the fully manual focus and shutter speed, you have that option, but it's also high tech and trustworthy. This is the kind of camera that I would feel comfortable shooting a wedding with, or really anything where I need to have a camera that I could depend on. But anyways, until next time, you guys, thank you so much for watching, and keep on shooting.